My name is Lori Power. My company is MP Benefits, and today I'm going to be talking about smart templates, sales and marketing activity resources tools. And that's really what templates are supposed to do, no matter where you get your templates or whether you develop them yourself. It's where efficiency and consistency meet. And when I say that, I mean using a template removes a lot of ongoing errors from repetitive preparation of the same content, because our brain gets used to seeing it, and then we don't pick up when definitely is spelled wrong, or hesitate is spelled wrong, or we use the wrong graphic within it. Templates are both consistent and they keep you efficient in the job. They're also really good for teams. Not everybody may be in employee group benefits. I think you'll see the value of template usage. So the first thing that I like to say is templates create an outcome. You have to take the time to make the time. It's much like the implication of artificial intelligence. What is that doing? It is removing a lot of repetitive behaviors and putting it into an artificial intelligence. But you still have to be able to direct it and use it, modify it and customize it to how it's going to be used for you. Templates come into play a lot when you have that repetitive content, but you want to have an outcome. You want to have more time with your client base. You want to have more time with your teams and be able to also train them to do what you want to do for either the project at hand or your clients. So specifically, when we're talking about insurance and employee group benefits, it's a long game. I would say any customer focused content is a long game. You want to keep your clients for a long time. We want to create a closing ratio from the time when we first meet a prospect until when they become our client. And in order to close that ratio, that efficiency and consistency needs to matter. So here I've put in just some timelines. Again, this is more specific to employee group benefits, is to say if we have consistency in what we're doing, then we will keep clients for a long term. And that's where the revenue generation happens. Excellence is always determined in the next 5 minutes. And Corey's used to me saying this, I like to pull on a bit of a Walt Disney adage to this. When Walt was putting together his first park in California, one of the things that he embedded into his team isn't that the competition is everywhere. The competition is never going to be who else has a theme park, because at that point, nobody had a theme park. So they were a standalone. But he drilled into his team the fact that everybody is my competition in coming to that theme park, because people are spending money. And for that reason, whether they stopped to fill up their vehicle, whether the kids were giving them a hard time in the car on the journey, whether they got a bad post in the mail, those create competitions to how we have our output with our client base. And so in our world, when we're thinking about templates and we are customer focused, templates also will be the emails, how we correspond with our clients, our blogs, our constant communication, the visuals that we use. All of those need to be consistent to match the brand that we are building, whether we're doing meetings or networking, phone calls, or Zoom calls like this. It is very important to be consistent. Excellence depends on excellent experiences. So my goal when it comes to employee group benefits and putting templates together is to create dependable, reliable, easy to use templates that people can apply to their own practice immediately. Of course, the point is that we're all in business to make money. We don't need to sugarcoat that. We want to get better at what we're doing, and we will get better at what we're doing when we're more client facing. So this is just looking at the Excel templates that I put together. These are graphs that can be embedded into Word documents, but they're using Excel as the main platform. And I do a table of contents, easy to make a table of contents into an Excel. You just link the pages. Using Excel is really nice because you can pre-populate the formulas in there. So if you were using repetitive formulas where you need to constantly calculate something, then make it into a table where you just need to put in the variable that changes all the time. I'm using a rate sheet here where the rates may change and the volume may change for insurance purposes, but the formula on what we're doing doesn't change. So being able to modify and customize that information specifically to that customer is really important. Whether you're changing the color code or the font size, how you're putting it out there, it really matters. Now, I'm using a real life example here of a client that is getting a increase on their employee group benefit program. And what I want to do is I want to highlight where they're getting the increase and why. I see that the rates right off the bat are looking fairly good, consistent with the marketplace, but where they're standing out is specifically on pharmacy and dental care. So now I'm building out the graphs, which are going to illustrate how that is applicable. And I'm putting all of these graphs together first before I put them into the presentation. What I'm doing is I'm making sure that the numbers, because like I say, the formulas are consistent. So the template is based on the formulas. Inserting the client data is specific to that client. What I'm doing is I'm focusing on what I need to concentrate on when I talk to the client. I'm not interested in putting everything together that I would for every other client. I'm using, as you can see on the bottom of that Excel sheet, I'm using just the specifics that are going to work for me for this client. And then I'm going to pull them out and attach them to a presentation. I want to look at the rates in a three-dimensional way to build out the graphics and make sure that I am clear where that client and the messaging needs to happen. So I want to make sure that I understand the numbers, that I understand the narrative, because if I don't, then they won't. But I also need the visuals to back me up. And this is where the numbers really matter in our business. Now in here, Corey, specifically, you'll see that I'm double checking my formulas to make sure that it matches with the target loss ratio. Because with the target loss ratio, just so those of you who are not in insurance understand, when we are building out our formulas, some variables may change, but you can change the formula once and it's going to be applicable for all. And that is the value of a template. Okay. One of my very favorite graphs to use is, especially when I'm talking, because we're dealing with employee benefits here, I want to see what the employees have actually submitted, not just what they've been paid, right? That's just showing me the end result. That's like looking at the leg numbers and not looking at the leading numbers that go into it. And I want to be able to show that amongst the different divisions that they might have as well. And this is where, once I have all of those graphs put together, now you can see I've pulled out another template, and now I'm inserting that information into the Word document that is going to serve as the backup presentation for when I'm meeting with that client. This is just showing where I'm inputting the information, going through to show that it's supposed to support the conversation. It can be a standalone or a leave behind, depending on the client and depending on how in-depth you want to be and how educated the client is for that information. You can add to it and build the narrative out. But more specifically, when I'm doing these reports, I'm putting it in place so that it matches what I want to have a conversation about. So the presentation is more, for me, a leave behind, and that's how I've developed them, so that it always matches the narrative that I'm telling them. And I'm trying to guess where their questions are going to be, Karen. So when you're putting together your proposals, and yours sounds like it'll be more of a leave behind or a speak for itself. This is the importance, I think, of putting tangible graphs in there, because as you can see here, I include the numbers themselves to show that these are real numbers, but I also do the graphics to make sure, because the picture speaks volumes, right? So there's one thing to say it, and then there's another thing to show it. So I've concentrated here on where I put all the graphs in one location in the presentation after I do the rates, just so that we are building this out. And this is what we're talking about here, Corey. This specific one is looking at where the divisional breakdown might be. So when you have those larger clients with multiple divisions, and they need to look at those numbers just not at one location, but at several locations. What I use this one for is, we may be paying a lot of premium for one location over the other, but everybody has blanket coverage. And this adds to the conversation to say, you know what, if I had a client in Ontario, or if I had a client who had overseas employees, then the benefit coverage is going to be different for them versus the clients that they're going to have, or the employees that they're going to have locally. What you can see here, Karen, is I go back into the narrative. And this usually forms just the end of the presentation, where it's almost like laying it out as almost a novel. You have your executive summary, you have your bulk of your messaging. I do the pictorials, the graphics, and then I back it up at the end, more of that terminology, so that if I tend to speak a little bit more in jargon, I want to have that jargon outlined so that they have a reference point. Again, what we're looking at here is where we start the presentation, the elements that go into creating that template, and then how you're going to use that template may combine several tools. So when I'm using Excel, or I'm using Word as my base for my templates, what I want to do is, once I start working in that Word document, or I start working in that Excel document, I don't want to be going back and forth to multiple documents. So you can add in your template, you can add the links, right? When you're working in Word, you can embed the Excel, so you never have to leave. And this is where we want to talk to know your audience. Again, remembering, and I think this is where sometimes people will deflect or not effectively use templates when they think that it's not going to be customizable. I consider templates, when I'm putting them together, I consider them more negative, right? Somebody said that years ago. They said, make your template a negative document. And this means that it might be 45 pages in Word to start with, but by the time I'm done getting it customized for that particular employee, it might only be 20 pages, right? But the goal is that I have a template where I can start with each of my clients and work it backward, right? And this, again, is another misnomer where some people might say, well, that's going to take a lot of time to do that. Actually, it's not. Once the template is there, you're used to using it, it's your content, you're just flagging it and going. So really, a proposal for me now per client might take about 30 minutes. When we're thinking about templates, and this will be important whether you're using these templates or you're using Canva or even legal templates, is always remember the different styles. What can I achieve within that template? So if we're doing like a social media graphic, we're appealing to somebody's visual, but it's how they're going to take it in as well. So always make sure that your different communication levels, or your templates that you're building, are taking in the fact, is somebody listening? Am I putting in a video content there? What is that messaging, and does it match the brand I'm creating? Of course, communication breakdown happens all the time, right? So we want to make sure that we're being effective. And this is, I think, the number one reason why I use templates in everything that I do. And to our early conversation on why you may use templates as well, is because it keeps me effective, it keeps the messaging clear, it keeps it consistent,
Mhm.
and it allows me to engage when I need to engage with the audience. We're not being bogged down by trying to recreate something. When I'm putting together my templates, I subcategorize them. So I may have a multiple templates. I might have blog templates. I might have letter templates. I might have email templates. I won't say I might, I do, right? I have different templates depending on what I'm doing. And this allows me to first ascertain, where do I spend the time during my day in working with clients in my team? What can I build out? Take the time to build, and it's a constantly evolving tool, which and then create an easy to share, whether you're using Google systems or you're using OneNote or Teams, but you can put those folders in there and categorize them. These are my presentation templates. We can all pull from this same templates. These are my email templates. We can all pull from those. And then if you modify them in the main template folder so everybody gets that modification. And what we put inside is what is applicable to us in our business. Using that education, I'm a huge proponent, and knowing that you're in the education field, a huge proponent of just-in-time education. We both know you need to say it, repeat it, and say it again. And you need to attach it in different ways to the nuggets that are applicable in that moment. So I always use the example of, if I took my teenagers and I said, okay, we're going to sit down and I'm going to talk to you right now about the importance of a mortgage when the time comes. And I spill it all out for them, tell them everything they need to know, share my experience with it. And I go, I'm done. 10, 12 years later, could be 20 years later, they go to buy a mortgage. They have retained none of that, right? Because it's not just in time, it's not consistent, it's not ongoing. Templates allow us to constantly put in that just in time education, whether we're aligning it with somebody's safety measures, whether we're aligning it with productivity, whether we're aligning it with the education flow. It allows that repetitive content that to us may look like, oh, I'm always saying it, but to our end audience, it's probably the first time that they're actually processing it. So this again is more specific to looking at templates on the insurance side, looking at the plan design and rate sheet. But I will argue that most templates, when you're doing presentations, will probably have a form of the same thing. You want to have your disclosure, you want to have an opening, you want to have the executive summary, and you also want to have the graphics that support it. Vary the content according to the audience. Vary the content on your proposals, you working with your customer base. When do I have those touch points with my customer? Do I only meet my customer once a year, or do I meet my customer every quarter? So if I meet my customer every quarter, then I'm going to want to have 4 different proposal options that I can vary and mix accordingly. I do that a lot with social media posts as well. I usually will do my posts every 3 months, and I want to make sure that my content is varied every 3 months. I might use the same content for all clients at a 3-month mark, but it's going to be different for September, October, November, right? But they're all the same kind of template. This is one of my favorites. This is what Corey was talking about here, is looking at the numbers, how they apply to a client. This is where you can really take those Excel graphics and make them pop within your presentation. And this again is more specifically, I feel bad hearing it because it's really specific to employee benefits, but I think you'll get the idea. So when you're looking at putting out your templates on how it's going to work for you, again, break it down not just to emails and letters and presentations, but you can also subcategorize it, especially for your team. What are they going to use for administrative, right? What do they need for their tools on a day-to-day just to get their job done? What are social media posts? There are different forms of social media posts, whether you're doing it on Facebook or LinkedIn, but you can create those templates. The Excel calculators, the PowerPoints, again, you don't want to have to recreate the background of your PowerPoint. You want to have that ready to go so you can put your content in that is applicable. And the goal, of course, with any templates is, to learn, create value, and to cement your client to you over the long term.
I think I definitely see the merit in it, because I do have an A3 Liber Arch file full of paper that I need to get rid of, and I don't want to replicate this year. So it will help with sort of communication as well, especially if we can share those documents and the students kind of take ownership of them as well, and like that might kind of help the working relationship. But yeah, no, there's been, I've made a few notes there, a few of the phrases you've said. I think I can spot more efficiencies that sort of can be made, but also like that I can maybe create and pass on to others to sort of help me out as well. So I really appreciate that.
I find when I first started to organize, because I was like anybody else, when I first started using templates, they were all over the place. Like, it was like, oh, what template did I use for that? I want to reuse it again. So I one of the things I might recommend is just mind map your day a little bit. What do I do and when? And that'll help you create titles for what is applicable for that template. So for instance, if between 9 and 10 every morning, that's the time that you really dive into your emails, right? I want to make sure I'm answering everybody before lunchtime, right? I'm being efficient. So there you know it. One of my folders is now going to be emails. I might subcategorize out my emails according to common responses. Am I constantly, say if you were a registrar, right? If somebody is constantly saying, okay, well, when can I start applying for what course? Well, I'm going to just pick that template and give them the links that they would need. So subcategorizing out that way. When I'm working social media, I will categorize out 5 different ways. I will categorize out on whether what kind of social media I'm posting. So what platform do I use? Am I using LinkedIn? Am I using Twitter, which is now X? Go figure. Facebook, or TikTok, it could be as well, where you're doing videos. And then within those, I might have a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so that the day themes, I know the Chamber of Commerce here does this really well. They will post just once or twice a day, and they do this TikTok thing, but their daily theme is different. So they may have a theme one day that looks at manufacturing, right? And then they may have a day that looks at technology. So mind map a little bit, what are your daily duties, and that'll really help align where you build out those templates. But I hope to see you back again sometime, and really I thank you so much for your interest. If you have questions, just reach out.
Excellent. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Lauren.